All right, let's do it. I'm Roger. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Roger.
We're on page 67. We have any new guys in here in the last few days, last week? Okay. We're in the middle of the fourth step. And if you've just got here, don't be thinking you're doing this step now. Don't do that. Just try and listen. Try and hear, take these ideas in and let them take root. But don't worry about doing anything with this right now because you're not ready to do it. And you should be assigned a retreat buddy here that should help get you up to speed on where we are. If you want to do some homework, read the first 67 pages in front of this and the doctor's opinion so you have an idea what we're talking about. The other thing I wanted to say, because I've talked to several of you in the last several days about some of these ideas, and you're reflecting on your life and you're thinking that there's got to be big changes that are going to have to happen. And that may or may not be true, but the idea that I'm going for here is don't make any decisions. You can't possibly know what you're supposed to be doing when you get out of here as far as do I stay with her, do I leave her, do I change jobs, what do I do? Don't worry about that. It's not time to worry about that. Don't worry about your amends because we're not on the amends yet. Just kind of try and be where we are with this and let the ideas have their way with you. That's all we got to do right now is just try and soak up the ideas. The better I understand this process, the better result I'm going to get, which is why I go so slow with this. And it seems, I'm sure to some of you, it seems like watching paint dry, but these are big, big, big ideas, and we got to find a way to have them make sense to us because they're asking us to change, and none of us want to change. We might acknowledge the need for change, but none of us really want to change. So if you're going to tell me I have to change, then I want to have a good reason why I should and understand why it's necessary. So that's why we're in this fourth step, we're taking apart our thinking and our ideas and our perceptions. And we started with resentment, and we saw some things in that process which should be helpful. One, we saw that my perception, the way I see people and the world, essentially is that they're threatening to hurt me or they've hurt me. And to some extent that may be true. In some examples that you have, it may be absolutely true. But in other examples, it may not be true. It might just be the way you saw it. That's why they're very clear to point out whether the resentment is real or imagined, it doesn't matter. It still has the power to kill me. Then we talked about how resentment's always in the past tense. And they gave us a conclusion. And their conclusion is that we concluded after doing this process, the 12 steps, not the fourth step, that any life that was going to be full of resentment was going to lead to futility and unhappiness. And you can just check that off for yourself, what your personal experience is with that. So, then they gave us a new approach, the course. This was at the bottom of page 66. A new way to look at these people and these things that disturbed us. That's the way out of resentment. To change the way I look, to change my attitude, to change my angle of approach with the world. It doesn't happen overnight. You got to practice. That's why we got the other steps. So now, interestingly, in the inventory, you notice fear is bracketed quite often in the example they gave us on page 65. And I would have, if I was doing this, I would have put fear by everything. But they've got it in enough places. So now we go, I'm back on 67. Notice the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. That means it touched every area of me, of my being. It, fear, set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. But did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. So they just told us a couple of things. to use the metaphor, the fabric of your life, what your life is made out of, they're saying fear is systemic. It's everywhere. It's shot through the fabric of my being. Okay, fine. Then it says that fear makes the decisions. Fear sets in place the circumstances which bring me consequences I don't like. Felt I didn't deserve. And now they're asking me, but didn't you really make the decision that started this happening? So the question is how does fear run my life? How does fear make my decisions? So for instance, I might be afraid of not getting you to like me. So I'll be in a situation where you'll be spouting a bunch of crap that I don't agree with, and I'll just go, And later on, someone will come to me and tell me something about myself relative to that conversation, and I'll say, oh, no, you got completely the wrong idea. Well, no, I heard you say that. I heard you say that with him. I heard you agree with him, and now you're saying you don't. Which is it? You know? And now I've created the very situation with that fear that I didn't want to have, which is I've got a conflict with someone. Another example might be taxes. I had a great fear of the Internal Revenue because I hadn't paid them any money for several years, federal or state. And when you take that apart and you go, well, why are you afraid of the Internal Revenue? Well, obviously, because I don't pay taxes. Oh, really? Well, why didn't you pay your taxes? Because I was busy trying to impress you. I gave my tax money to the bartender to buy you around, in the simplest form of that. So my fear of not getting your approval had me divert my money into other areas to impress people that I didn't even like. Right? So I've got this great fear of the IRS. And, you know, there's someone to fear, that's for sure, especially if you're on the wrong side of them. But the point is, the fear made the decision. I had a lot of problem with women. And because I thought the means justified the end, you know, or the end justified the means. So I would tell you whatever you wanted to hear in order for me to get what I wanted. And then I'd get what I want, and I wouldn't want you anymore. And then you'd say, hey, but you said, what about that? You know, I go, well, too bad. You know, move on. And I was just this wrecking ball running through my life. I got robbed. And I decided to hate all the people of this color for the rest of my life because these two guys robbed me. But the truth is, I was down there in that area to get robbed. And I made decisions that put me in that neighborhood. And I was dealing with drug dealers that put me in that neighborhood. And my fear of not being able to get what I want put me in that neighborhood. I could have never been robbed if I wouldn't have been in that neighborhood. Those guys could have never robbed me. They would have had to get on the bus to come and rob me. You know? So that's what they're talking about. So the question is, you know, as with the resentment, they said, you know, one of the things we found out is that these people and these things really dominated us. All the people we thought we were getting over on and we were angry with really dominated us. And they controlled us from the past. The past is dead. The past does not exist. The past that just happened a nanosecond ago doesn't exist. Neither is the one a week, a month, a year, 5 years, 10 years ago. Past is gone. The only place it's alive is in our heads. And the resentment keeps us in the past and keeps the past alive, creates an emotional environment where we keep reacting to this stuff, and we're not even there. And we're certainly not here. Fear does just the opposite. Fear plays with the future. One of the acronyms for fear is forget everything and run. Another one is future expectations already realized. When you have a fear, when I have a fear, what are we saying? We're saying we know what's going to happen in the future. Not only do we know what's going to happen, we know how it's going to turn out, and we know how we're going to feel. And then we know what we're going to do out of that. Just think about that. If one of you walked up to one of the other guys and said, you know, I can read the future. And I just need $1,000 and I'm going to start investing in the market. We're going to get filthy rich. You'd go, you're nuts. But we do that to ourselves all the time, every day. You're literally telling yourself you can see into the future. You cannot. If you could, was this in your future? Was this picture in your future? Sitting in a little room with me, trying to get over on whatever you're trying to get over on again or for the first time? That wasn't in your future. That wasn't in your plan. Was that squad car in your plan? No. Was that divorce, that separation, those restraining orders, was that in your plan? No. The cops in your plan, the banks in your plan, the IRS in your plan? No. No. I got all kinds of evidence that I can't tell the future, but I don't tell myself that. So I'm getting my butt kicked with fear. And it's hard. If anyone in here is the way I was, I didn't think I was afraid of anything. The last years I drank, I would have welcomed someone putting me out. I put myself in a position to get hurt. It didn't bother me. I was ready to go. And you can't hurt someone who doesn't have anything left to lose. That was my thing. And it wasn't that I was tough or bulletproof. I just thought I was dead. Emotionally, spiritually, just dead. You can't hurt someone like that. Then I get here and I go through this process and I find out not only am I not afraid, I'm afraid of everything. There's a component of fear in everything I do. What are they going to think? How is this going to work? Am I going to be okay? What am I going to look like? What are they going to think of me? What are they thinking now? And then you look at it, you look at their face, you look at the room, and you make up a story. Well, this is what he's thinking. That's how you get to resentment. Fear leads you to resentment. Look at him. What's him about? Son of a bitch, he's sleeping. What is that about? You know, and your head takes off with you. Perception. So, they say, here's the instruction. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. Great. What's the first deal? Put them on paper. There we go. So you're making another list. These are the things I'm afraid of. Though we had no resentment and connection with them, maybe, maybe not, we asked ourselves why we had them. There's your second column. So you exhaust yourself, and these are the things I'm afraid of. And I'll tell you something. If spiders is on the list, that's fine, but spiders isn't what getting you sober. It's not what's making you drink. Spiders and fear of heights is not what's making you drink. But if it's a fear, put it on there. That's fine. But we're looking for the other ones, the ones that keep us up at night and the ones that we drink at. So there's your second column. You get done listing these fears, and then you ask yourself, why do you have them? I'll give you a clue. I don't know is not an acceptable answer. I don't know. I'm afraid of people. Why? I don't know. That doesn't work. That doesn't give me any illumination at all. I'm afraid of people. Why? Sit with that. Be with that. They emphasize meditation here. Meditate. Why? Why? Oh, because I'm afraid they won't like me. I'm afraid I'm not going to get their approval. There you go. Now you got something. I'm afraid they're going to find out I'm a fraud. I'm afraid they're going to find out I'm a hypocrite. I'm afraid they're going to find out I don't know all the answers. I'm afraid. Now we go. Now we got some whys. Why do I have the fear? Good thing to know. Now, it looks like they deviate from the pattern because they ask some different questions now. They don't say what part of self was affected by the fear. They say, now that you know what you're afraid of and now you know why, ask this question. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? What? What is that? Well, remember, selfish, self-centered fear. That's the root of our problems. The main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind, in his thinking, right? So now they're saying, so you've been self-willed, you've been self-reliant, you've been self-propelled, you've been running the show yourself. Has that worked or not? So you ask each one of those with each one of those fears, and why do I have them? The next question is, did self-reliance work or not? Another way you can head this up on your column is, was it God-reliant or self-reliant? God-reliant or self-reliant? And even if you're a godly man, you can ask the question. It doesn't mean because you're a godly man, you act in a godly fashion. So, God-reliant or self-reliant? Or God-reliant and Roger-reliant, And the answer is always going to be self-reliant. And the question is, no. Did self-reliance work or not? No. It was Roger-reliant, and it never worked. There were times it appeared to work, but it never worked. Because, resentment is based on the perception that I'm always going to be hurt or threatened to be hurt, okay? Fear is based on the perception that I'm not going to get what I want, or I'm not going to be able to hold on to what I have. All your fears are going to fall under that umbrella. Not going to get what I want, not going to be able to hold on to what I have. Everyone in this room's got examples of that. I got a goal. Great. What's the goal? I'm going to make $50,000 this year. Great. Did you make 50? I did make 50. How do you feel? I feel kind of crappy. It didn't work. Oh. So you don't go, I wonder if this is self-reliance failing me. You go, oh, I must need 60 grand. Must have shot too low. It just must not be the right number. We never think that the way we're looking at it could have a flaw in it. So then they go, self-reliant or not. Then they ask us to reflect on this. Self-reliance was as good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. The arrogant man is a very scared man. When you have to pump up and let everyone know how good you are, how smart you are, how competent you are, how efficient you are, how everything you are, that's arrogant. I hold myself above you because I'm terrified as hell that I'm beneath you. So I overcompensate. That fear drives that. Run into a bully, same thing. That's a scared guy. Now, if that scared guy's got a gun, you better use your head. But bullies are frightened people, too. People that carry weapons are frightened people. When you run into a guy that carries weapons, you run into a scared man. You're a scared animal. In the circles that I ran in, the bigger, the meaner the guys got, the less stuff they carried. And the really crazy, murderous, rip your arm off and beat you over the head with it guys, they carried no weapons at all. They didn't need them. You look in their eyes and you just knew, oh, shit, this is a problem. So, for your reflection, consideration. Perhaps there's a better way we think so, for we're now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. They're assuming now, having taken the third step, that we either believe in God or are willing to believe in the possibility. So they're now illustrating to us what that would look like, right? Infinite God, there's part of their concept. We trust this infinite power rather than our finite selves. And one of the things we run into in this inventory process is the fact that my power only takes me so far. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I need to know what's my business and what's God's business. Where does my power stop? My power stops usually after the effort. And then the results will reveal whether it was a correct measure or not. We're in the world to play the role He assigns. Just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us and humbly rely on Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. Does anyone feel like this is kind of confusing relative to what they did with us on the resentments? Because they took us through this whole thing. How does this affect my self-esteem, my finances, my ambitions, my personal relations, my sex relations? They're not saying anything about that. There's a couple of different schools of thought here. One is that They didn't just want to repeat the column example over and over and over, so they just said, here, we've told you what to do. Put them on paper, ask yourself why you have them, and then proceed. So a lot of people, I don't know what your sheets say here, but a lot of people will then say, okay, what part of self was affected by this fear? Well, it's not a bad inquiry. It's not a bad reflection. So when I'm afraid of what you think of me, does it threaten my emotions, my emotional security, my need for approval? Does it threaten my self-esteem? Does it affect my self-esteem? Sure. How about my ambitions? Does it affect how I want to show up in the world, how I want you to think of me, how I want me to think of me? Does it affect my earning capacity or my ability to show up for work? Am I a salesman who can't sell? Am I a worker who can't work? Am I a boss who can't get to the desk? Good reflection. But this says, fear set in motion trains the circumstances which put me in a position that I thought I didn't deserve. So now I'm going to do a little mind twist with you, which is, it's hard to get a hold of this. But this is another way you can inquire as to the power of fear in your life and how it's affected you. And that's to turn the question around. Instead of, this is how fear affected me, we ask the question, if self is self-centeredness, if self is the root of the problem, then my problems are coming out of me running my life. Agreed? More or less. Wink, nod, blink. Okay. So now the question becomes, what part of self created the fear? Because you see, there is no fear except in my perception. The proof in that pudding is we take 10 of us out here and we expose us to the same situation. One of us might be terrified. One of us might be a little anxious. 8 of us might be totally unaffected. But it's the same stimulus, you see? So the fear isn't out in the world. The fear is in my perception. The fear is in the way I see it. And I'm not talking about the kind of fear that makes you jump back from stepping in front of a bus. I'm talking about the fear that's all imaginary in our head. What is he thinking? Why is he looking at me like that? Why is she doing that? I'll never keep her. They'll find out I'm a fraud. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I got to look like I know what I'm doing. I'm talking about the kind of fear that doesn't let me walk into the room. I'm talking about the kind of fear that doesn't let me consider any other ideas. Even though my life has been burned to the ground, I'm holding on to this idea that somehow, Bill Wilson's story, somehow I'll manage better next time. I can get a hold of this thing. Bill almost died from that idea that he could run his life. Several of us have been to that place. So what part of self, and these are normal ambitions, the need to be loved, the need to want security, emotional, physical, material, money, all normal ambitions. But with us, they're warped. So, did my need for your approval create that fear that wouldn't let me walk in the room? Did my need to be emotionally secure cause me to lie to you about how I felt about you so I could have a couple of days of intimacy? Yeah. Now you're getting it. Yeah. Did my fear of not being a big shot, not having you think I was really something, create that environment that allowed me to write $10,000 worth of bad checks? Yeah. And consequently, that rippled out into my life. I didn't have money for the IRS. I thought that was irrelevant. Because I was busy being a big deal. Anything was more important than the Internal Revenue. Till I started getting the letters. Then their priority in my life changed. Funny. It's just a perception thing. But I got to get in front of this idea that I'm creating my problem. Because if I'm going to wear the cloak of the victim, you can't get well from there. You can't get well from there if it's everybody else's fault. I had this huge resentment, even into my recovery. Oh, what a surprise. To my parents, about what lousy parents they were. And the reason I couldn't get on in life is because my whole self-esteem and my self-image had been totally shattered by a domineering father and a mother who didn't nurture. So there I was on my little cross. I can't do that. I'm screwed. I'm screwed. And you know where it shifted? When I did the amends with my dad. And in that process, I realized, this is just for me, I realized, hey, they had done the best job they could. They didn't wake up, January 21st, 1949 and say, our firstborn male son, let's screw this one up, huh? Let's really screw him up. We got him fresh. We'll just ruin his life. They didn't do that at all. They poured the next 20, 30 years of their life's energy into trying to help me be a viable life force. And I resented it. Why? Because if it was their fault, I never had to be responsible for me. That's why your ego hates this process. Because it's got you convinced it's them. And as long as it's them, you can't do anything about it. Look at the first 3 columns in resentments. This is what he did. This is how it affected me. Right? This is who I hate. This is what he did. This is how it affected me. I'm screwed. Over here, 4th column, this is what I did. I was inconsiderate. I was dishonest. I was fearful. Right? I can do something about what I did. I can never do anything about what you did for a couple of things. 1, I have no power over you. 2, it's in the past. It's dead. It hasn't happened. I'm the one keeping it alive. You'll find, I'll give you an example. I went to do an amend with an old girlfriend. And I had known her all grown up through school and everything. And I just treated her like crap. Because I was a rock star and I treated people like crap. And she had come out, I was out in Colorado, and she had come out to surprise me. And showed up at the door. And I looked and I said, what are you doing here? Hi, I love you. What the hell are you doing here? Who asked you here? That's how I greeted her. And this thing haunted me for years. Like about 20 years. I finally got back in town and not out of virtue, out of pain. This thing was just nagging me. So I wrote the amend out, and I called her. I said, it's me. She said, oh, I wonder what happened to you. And I said, I'd get together for some coffee. Yeah, fine. And I sat down, and I said, listen, I was wrong. I treated you really poorly, and I cited some of the examples that we both knew about. And she listened, and she just kind of smiled. And I got done, and she said, oh, I knew there was something wrong with you. I just blew it off. I went on with my life. And I thought, son of a bitch. That's how much power you have. But the other point was, you see, she had a normal response to me. This guy's crazy. He's not well. Get on with your life. Move on, girl. And she did. She wasn't sitting around every day going, God, I wonder what happened with Roger. I wonder why he treated me like that. I wonder what's wrong with me. She was healthy. She knew there was nothing wrong with her. She showed up fine. So she just blew it off and went on with her life. Me? No. I relived it. It's just like your head does. When you're having a good day, it can always go back in the files and find some stuff that you can feel crappy about. She was one of those things. So I got a great insight into that resentment thing because it wasn't alive in her. It was alive in me. Same with anything. Any harm done to you? Some of us have abuse in our background. Verbal, emotional, sexual. But once you remove yourself from the abuse, it stops. So that person hasn't abused me since I was 15. And I'm 58. So for 43 years, I abused me. I keep it alive by reliving it. So this fear thing is a nasty, nasty thing. We got to get our hands around it. We got to get an understanding that if I'm going to get over on fear, I got to have a new approach. I can't go through the world. We talked about this in chapel, about praying from lack. Fear is all based in lack. I need some more of this. I'm afraid I'm not going to get it. Now I've got it, and I'm afraid I'm not going to hold on to it. I'm afraid there's not enough. I got a mind that says because Bill Gates makes $2 billion, there's not enough for me. It's not true. It's not true. But I believe it's true, and then I act like it's true. Then I create the circumstances that prove to me it's true, and then I sit in my little shitty corner of the world going, God, what a mess. Why me? Why me? God, if I just could catch a break here and there, make a break. That's what I got to do, make a break. You can't make a break from this consciousness. All you can do is create more fear. So they're saying, now we're going to trust this power rather than ourselves. Here's a promise. I'm in the middle of page 68. We're in the world to play the role he assigns, just to the extent that we do as we think he would have us, and humbly rely on him, does he enable us to match calamity with serenity. That's a promise. That's my contract with this God idea, or the spirit of the universe, higher power. Just to the extent that I do God's will, God will allow me to match calamity with serenity. That doesn't mean, and by the way, it says that there are going to be some calamitous things that happen. Because you and I get sober and we start seeking God, it doesn't mean stuff isn't going to happen. Financial reversals, marital reversals, divorces, deaths, illnesses, all of that's just part of the existence thing, part of life. It's going to come. And what this is saying is, whatever happens to you, you'll have a center. The serenity idea is the core of my being, my consciousness. It's like the eye of the hurricane. Will be calm. I will have clarity. I will have peace of mind just to the extent I need to match the event. That's been my experience. I started out wanting there to be no problems. I thought, okay, I've gotten sober, I've done a bunch of your steps, for sure God's going to give me a break now, Well, no, because I got a lot of mess to clean up. One of the things you're going to find is you're going to get into this process. You might be a year, 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years into this thing going, Jesus, crappy stuff's still happening. But if you look at the root of where that crappy stuff started happening, it happened back when you were using. I was 5 years sober, and I hadn't filed taxes in 10 years. Ooh is right. But you see what I'm saying? I sobered up. I hadn't filed state or federal in 5 years. Now I'm 5 years sober. And I just got this little area I've been ignoring. I haven't filed my taxes in 10 years. So I had that fear living in me for all that time. It's got to be addressed. Either I address it using the tools and God, or it addresses me. And it kicks my butt. So there's the promise. So God reliant. Not sponsor reliant, not step reliant, God reliant. The steps are the vehicle for me to come in contact with the power. The steps will keep me in contact with the power as I work the steps. And eventually the steps will work you. You'll find yourself walk around one day and you'll be, all of a sudden you hear a voice say, oh, you're afraid. That's a step working you. You have a new awareness. So that 10th step is become the fabric of your being. The 11th step, prayer and meditation, has become the fabric of your being instead of fear. Takes time to build new responses. Takes practice, not an overnight matter. But if you can get in front of this idea, what part of self is causing the fear? I find out, good news, bad news, I'm responsible for everything in my life. That's the bad news as far as I'm concerned. The good news is I'm the only one that can do anything about it. So the question we keep coming back to is, will you have this thing? And what lengths are you willing to go to get it? Oh, you're not willing to deal with your taxes? That's fine. You're not willing to deal with your sex conduct? That's fine. Enjoy. And so part of your life is getting better while the other part gets worse. And you're just ripped up in this recovery thing. And you're going to meetings and you're hearing people describe being lifted out of those circumstances. And they're describing all these God experiences they're having. And it's just pissing you off. Because you're not getting any. But it never occurs to me to look and say, well, you're not doing what they're doing. You're doing a version of it. You can do your version of it. No one says you can't do your version of it. What they're reporting is a version that's less than this doesn't seem to work for them. Maybe it'll work for you, and then they always say, go try that. Go try that. So, we never apologize to anyone for depending on our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality is the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. So, I'm afraid. And my head, my ego wants to beat me up with that. Oh yeah, you're a real step machine. If you're such a godly person, if you found this power you were ranting in the community meeting about, and you're so high, now here you are, cowering in the corner in your mind because you're so afraid. What's that about? What's that about? Well, the truth is this. What they're saying is, to proceed in the face of fear is a courageous act. You're going to be afraid. It's a scary thing. Read ahead. You're doing this inventory because the first scary thing is looking at it. The second scary thing is telling someone about it. The third scary thing is after 6 and 7, you're going to go tell them about it. You're going to do this restitution bit. That's terrifying. At least it was for me. So, because I'm afraid, does it mean I don't have courage or faith? No. Fear is present. One of the things you'll find as you go through this process is fear increases. Your head will chatter at you. We talked about the monkey mind the other day. Your head will get busy telling you why you're disqualified to continue. It'll have a million different reasons. But the bottom line is you watch those ideas, and where they go is, you know what? They go off the path. I'm not doing steps. I'm not going to meetings. I don't have a sponsor. I didn't finish the process. I'm not expanding my spiritual life. I'm not seeking. I'm not reading. I'm not meditating. I'm not praying. And the end result of that is I'm left with what got me here. Me. Unchanged. An unchanged me can only recreate what it knows. So we're back in the bar. We're calling our dealer. We're getting hooked up. Because our head's saying, you know what? Needs some relief. And it ain't going to be God. It's going to be our friend, Mr. Walker. It's going to be our brother, Mr. Kane. You know, we're going to get hooked up, and it's going to be okay. And it's never okay. If you're in this room with me by now, you've already had the experience that it's getting worse, not getting better. You don't land here on a hunch. So, they trust their God. Never apologize for God. Instead, we let Him, the power. Don't let the pronouns push you away. If you got a problem about the imaging of God, the anthropomorphic, the visioning of God as a person, a being, a him, a her. Let go of it and just tell yourself that I'm going to let the power demonstrate through me what it can do. You don't have to know, and you don't have to believe as they believe, or the guy next to you believes. But here's the deal. Instead of apologizing or making excuses, I let the power demonstrate through me what it can do. I haven't had a drink in 28 years. That's a powerful demonstration. I have had an illuminating experience doing these steps and studying this book. That's a powerful demonstration. As we go through this, you'll realize, maybe you will, maybe you won't, but it should illustrate that I'm changed. Obviously, I'm not perfect. But it doesn't say I have to be perfect. It says I have to strive to be better. I found out in this process, I thought I was a bad guy, found out I was a real sick guy. That's an explanation, not an excuse. I was really sick. Because I'm not a mean person. But everybody in my life got hurt. By me. Funny thing, when you look at your resentments, your fear, and your harmful behavior towards others, your sex conduct, a lot of different names, a lot of different days, a lot of different decades, a lot of different people, same MO. The only thing that's consistent in that whole scenario is me. I was the only one present for it all. Do you think that means something? I think it does. So, we go to prayer. All it's done is it's had to identify our fear, ask us if we're self-reliant or God-reliant. Now, it's talked to us a little bit about courage and faith, trusting God. Then it gives us a prayer. We ask Him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what He would have us be. At once, we commence to outgrow fear. Those are two really big sentences. So what am I doing? I'm humbling myself in front of the power. I'm admitting in and of myself I'm insufficient. That's step one. I'm powerless. So I asked Him to remove the fear because I have no control over the fear. That's step two. God will. God can. And direct my attention to what He would have me be. What it would have me be. What the steps would have me be. Not do. Do you see that? There's a big difference. What if it said, fear and direct my attention to what you would have me do? You would say, well, here's a bunch of right actions for you to take. There's an axiom in AA. We say you can act your way into right thinking, but you can't think your way into right acting. That is true, especially when you're new and to a certain extent. What they're saying is, you come with me, do what I do, go where I go. And so you're coming with me to jails, and you're coming with me to meetings, and you're coming to me to workshops, and we're doing all this crap together. And you're going, what the hell is this about? You know, this is what they call service, right? Oh, really? Wonderful, you know. And at some point, you need to understand why you're doing that. Trying to be useful, trying to be helpful, trying to carry a message of hope and recovery to people that have a need for it. Not necessarily a want, but a need. You never know. You never know when you're planting a seed. I'll give you an example. Not recently, but for a number of years, I went out to Stillwater Prison, which is a maximum security prison out here in Stillwater. It was built in the 40s. It's an old cell block design. It's just cages, stacked on cages. And there was a program in there where the cons could get out of the main population and go to a program called the Atlantis Program. We have 50, 60 guys in there for 3 to 6 months where they could learn about this stuff. And I went and, you know, if any of you have done any jail work, you know you can't bring bullshit into the jail. If they smell bullshit, they'll eat you alive. So you have to have something that is significant, has depth and weight. You have to bring the truth. If you don't bring the truth, they just sniff it out and they blow you off. Anyway, I've done this for years. And, you know, you never know what happens to these guys. Some of these, when you're sitting with a guy doing 2 consecutive life terms and you're talking about freedom, you better have something to bring to the table. Because he's never, ever going to walk free. So, anyway, did this for a long time, and I have a nonprofit company that does audio recording for 12-step stuff, and in 2000 we did the International here in Minneapolis. And I did it as a memorial to my dad, who got sober 10 years before me, started this tape library thing that I ended up taking over, and also was on the committee that got the site committee to Minneapolis that got Minneapolis chosen to have this international. Get 50,000 drunks in one place is an interesting proposition. So I'm recording this thing, and we're in 9 venues all over town. We got 430-some things to record in 4 days. I haven't slept in 2 or 3 days. I mean, literally, it was 24/7. And I'm over at the Dome, and I'm coming in the sub-level that you can drive into, and it's about 4 floors underground, and I'm leaning up against this wall, and I'm almost so tired I'm crying. I'm just thinking, why in the hell did you ever say you wanted to do this? What could you have been thinking, And all of a sudden, this guy comes around in a golf cart, and he goes, "Hey, are you Roger?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "It's me, Willie." "Willie? You don't remember us?" "I'm sorry, I don't remember you. Either one of you. I'm seeing double." Willie says, "No, I was in Stillwater when you were out there. I was in the Atlantis program. You took us through the steps. Changed my life. I got out. I just got married. I'm a manager here at the Metrodome. Thank you, thank you, thank you." And it was just like a big syringe full of God. And I just said, that's why you do what you do. A lot of times we're just planting seeds. I plant the seed, but I won't enjoy the shade. Someone else will enjoy the shade. I don't do it to enjoy the shade. I do it because something's happened in my life that's so profound that I'm compelled to try and help other people. That's not my natural inclination, to run around trying to help you. My natural inclination is what we've been seeing in these steps, is what about me? What's in it for me? Screw you, what about me? When am I going to get more? When am I going to get mine? When am I going to get some of yours? Same thing happened to Wilson. When he sobered up, he's laying in the hospital, he's thinking, the thought crosses his mind. There's probably thousands of people out there would like a shot at what I got. Where did that come from? No, it came much more gradually to me. I never had a moment where I woke up and said, "Oh, I got to help people." That was not in my list of things to do. But in the doing, in being willing to do, I had a whole list of things I was never going to do in AA. Never going to go to the same meeting twice. Never going to pick up an ashtray. Never going to give them any money. Never going to get a sponsor. Never going to speak. Never going to do a step. Never, 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 never. And eventually, each one of those nevers just got thrown away. At some point, I got to a point where I said, screw it. I'm throwing the list away, and I'm just going to do this thing. The hope of the prayer is that that'll happen for you. So it says, I ask the power to remove my fear because I've identified that I'm powerless over it and direct my attention to what he would have me be. I've been hammering on this because this is the deal. Your consciousness, your conscious state of mind is your being. All action is born in thought. So if you don't have any idea what you're thinking, you're not going to understand why you're doing what you're doing and how come you're getting these crappy results. But once I understand, if all action is born in thought, then all my actions are my responsibility. If it's my responsibility, I can do something about it. But it's your responsibility, I'm left to your whimsy. Now, it's good news and bad news, because the truth is, I don't want to be responsible for me. I want you to be responsible for me. Someone, anybody than me, be responsible for me. But that's the weight, and that's also the joy of the recovery process. What I find out is, regardless of anyone or anything or any of my circumstances, I can get well. I had a guy sponsoring that was a heroin addict. And he sat in our meeting for years because he liked the vibe. He liked the way it felt. He never did anything. He just liked the way it felt. He'd come every week and sit with us. And it's groovy, man. It's groovy. A lot of love in the room. It's wonderful. And it was, He was right. But he never did the steps. And then he came up to me and he said, I got a little problem. I said, what's that? He said, I got a federal indictment coming down. I said, really? Interesting. What step? No. It seems he was he had quite a talent, actually, for wire fraud. And people love to give this guy money over the phone. And he embezzled over $1 million. And then he also had a couple of fraudulent companies set up to launder the money through it. It goes on and on. Anyway, he's saying, I'm going to court. And there's a federal indictment coming down, and I'm going to go to prison for a long time. What do you think I should do? And I said, I don't know what you should do. I don't know what you should do, man. But I can tell you what your options are. You can start running right now, and you will run the rest of your life. Or you can stand in front of it. Those are the two options. That was the last conversation I had with him. Showed up about 4 or 5 years later. Frank's back. Where you been? Prison. Really? Yeah, interesting. So he had, I think, 20, 25 years. He's looking at 20, 25 years, and he served 5. And he's a crazy guy, but he got off probation for the first time when he was 44. That was a big deal. I'm off paper, man. Then we turned his talent of wire fraud into he's looking for a job. The guy's been in prison. He's been a thief all his life. Never had a job, but he's got these enormous tax debts because he ran hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars through accounts with his name on it. And they're going, "Where'd you get this money?" And you never had a job, So we find out he's got a talent for wire fraud. So he has become a very highly paid and skilled telephone fundraiser for a nonprofit organization. In the first year Frank was on the phone, he grossed more than the other 12 people in the office in contributions. So that's an example of taking that thing that was a defect, turning it into a positive thing. He's making all kinds of money. He has none of it because he's got all this restitution that he's got to do. So he's making 80, 90 grand a year, and he's living in a $400 a month apartment, because he has the money. But he goes to me, he says, "God, they're taking all my money." I said, "No, Frank, they're taking all their money, and they're giving it back to the people you took it from. That's what they're doing." "Oh, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, their money, right, And he'll get out from under this thing eventually, but it's going to take some time. So, what would you have me be? Not do, be. That's what the 10 steps about. What are you being? Being fearful, being dishonest, being inconsiderate. What's the 11th step say? It says, pray for knowledge of God's will and the power to carry it out. That's all it says. It doesn't say pray about your job, pray about this, pray about that. It says pray for God's thinking, and then pray for the juice to do it, because you ain't going to want to. That's all. That's really simple. At once, in that moment, I commenced to outgrow fear. It does not say, you're now fearless. Commence, to begin, to start, to outgrow fear. So how do I keep this fear monster off my back? By doing that over and over. Not the prayer, the inventory. Where am I being self-reliant? Now, how can I turn that into God-reliant? What would you have me be? If you don't like the God idea, what would the steps have me be? Well, nowhere in the steps does it say steal. Does it say lie? Does it say cheat? Does it say be dishonest? So if you got a problem with fear, you're going to have to practice the opposite, which is faith. You got a problem with negativity, you're going to have to practice positivity. You can't change the negative by working on it. You can only change the negative by practicing the opposite of it. So I got fear, I got faith. I got resentment. I don't work on my resentment. I practice patience, tolerance, kindness, consideration. Any of those or all of those. See what I'm saying? Now we're practicing faith, which is really juju, weird if you don't have, even if you do have an idea of the God concept, even if you do have a concept and you come from a solid religious practice, you still have failed to have the experience that the religious practice has offered. So it doesn't matter. Church man or no man, agnostic, believer, doesn't matter. You got to practice what you be. Because what you be is going to be the reflection of your character, and it's going to reflect in your life. You be an a-hole, you be a liar, cheat, and a thief, and that's what your life's going to look like. You can't be a liar, cheat, and a thief and have your life look like Mother Teresa and have everyone coming to you telling you how wonderful you are and giving you money. It's not going to happen. So we begin to outgrow fear. There's no promise that we're going to beat the fear thing, but we learn how to live with it. And as we practice this faith idea, we find that it loses its power. There's a fundamental, a universal law. We talked about this too. And the reason we keep talking about it is because it's the truth and it is applicable in all these areas. Anything the mind focuses on expands. That's the nature of the energy of thought. That which is concentrated on will expand. So, they just described how to have faith. And then they told us that's how you outgrow fear. So I'm going to have to keep practicing this faith idea. Over and over and over. For how long? Till you stop breathing. That's how long. But really all you got to do is right now practice it. Don't think about having to do this the rest of your life or for a year or all week. Just try it now. And then you'll get some results, and then you'll feel good about yourself, and you'll pat yourself on the back, and you'll forget about it, and the fear will come back, and you'll do it again. It's an exercise. It's like learning to play an instrument. It's like learning an athletic skill, a different position. Football, different position. Basketball, different position. Different roles, different ways to do the job. That's all this is, except it's in a spiritual context, in an emotional context, in a mental context, psychological context. Right? So if you want to outgrow fear, that's how he says to outgrow fear. You guys are restless. Let's take our break now. It's 9 o'clock. We'll come back at 10 after.